Have you ever had that sudden sinking feeling that you're trapped?
Trapped how?
I don't mean physically trapped, like in a broken elevator or something. I'm talking about something much more unsettling. I mean trapped inside your own head.
Ah, yes. That's a very specific and I would say a very profound kind of existential anxiety.
Mhm.
The feeling of being locked in the prison of your own consciousness.
Exactly. It's that moment where you're looking at the world, you see the trees, the people walking by, the stars, but there's this nagging, terrifying suspicion that you aren't actually touching the real world out there.
Mm-hmm.
You're just watching a movie projected on the back of your eyes. You're seeing a render. You're trapped in the user interface, and you can't get to the source code.
It's isolation on a cosmic scale.
Hmm.
And for a long, long time in Western philosophy, that wasn't just, a late-night paranoia. It was the law. It was the defining rule of human existence.
And that is exactly where we're starting today. We are going to dive into the work of a man who looked at that prison cell, looked at the walls of his own mind, and said, I'm breaking out.
A proper escape plan.
We are doing a deep dive into the philosophy and the spiritual science of Rudolf Steiner. But to understand his escape plan, and it really is a hack of reality, we first have to meet the jailer. We have to talk about the big boss of Western philosophy, Immanuel Kant.
Kant is absolutely the formidable gatekeeper here. You really can't appreciate the magnitude of what Steiner was attempting unless you understand the line in the sand that Kant drew.
Okay, so set the scene for us. What was this line?
Well, in the late 18th century, Kant basically set the rules for what human beings can and cannot know. He argued that our intellect is wired in a very specific and limiting way.
How so?
We receive sensory data, sight, sound, touch, and our mind organizes that data into a picture of the world.
So let me get this straight. Kant is saying that everything I see, everything I touch is just a picture my mind cooked up. It's not the thing itself.
Precisely. That is the core of it. Kant called these phenomena things as they appear to us. But he argued that we can never, ever know the thing in itself, the ding and sitch,
The thing in itself.
the essence of reality, what the world is before it passes through the filter of our senses in our brain. For Kant, that is forever locked away. He called this the limit of knowledge. It was a hard ceiling.
So he essentially told humanity, you can look at the screen, you can navigate the interface, but you can never, ever look behind it.
That's a perfect modern analogy for it.
Yeah, that sounds incredibly frustrating. It's like being told you can play the video game, but you can never know the developer, you can never understand the code that makes it run. You're just stuck in the simulation forever.
It was frustrating for many, but for the scientific establishment of the 19th century, it became a kind of dogma.
They just accepted it.
They embraced it. There was this prevailing attitude, later summarized by the physiologist Du Bois-Reymond with the Latin phrase ignorabimus.
Which meant
We do not know and we shall not know. It was an admission of defeat, but they wore it like a badge of scientific honor. They believed the human mind was purely mechanical, capable of understanding dead matter like how a watch works, but totally incapable of grasping the essence of life or spirit.
And this is where Rudolf Steiner enters the chat.
Right.
Looking at our sources, he doesn't just come across as a philosopher. He feels more like a hacker of consciousness. He looked at Kant's "you shall not pass" sign and decided to build a ladder right over it.
He really did. Steiner's entire mission, right from his early work, was to prove that this limit of knowledge wasn't a boundary in the universe itself.
It was a boundary in us.
It was a boundary in the observer.
Yeah.
He argued that if you change the way you think, if you upgrade the software of your mind, the wall disappears. The thing in itself isn't hidden. We just aren't looking at it with the right eyes.
So today, we are unpacking that upgrade. We aren't just talking about abstract theory. We are talking about a fundamental shift in how the mind processes reality. We're going to look at how Steiner differentiates between the dead thinking we use every day and what he calls living thinking. We're going to find out why he thinks most modern intellectuals are actually spiritual mummies.
Whoa!
Which is a fantastic and terrifying image we have to discuss.
It is a great image.
And we're going to learn how to access what he calls the higher I.
It is an adventure of reason, in the truest sense of that phrase. It's about moving from a passive spectator of reality to an active participant in creation.
Okay, let's go back to that wall. The matchup you mentioned is Kant versus Goethe. Now, I know Goethe as the guy who wrote Faust, the poet, the dramatist.
Sure.
But Steiner seems to think Goethe is the key to cracking this whole code. Why Goethe? What did a poet have to do with this kind of hardcore philosophy?
This is a really fascinating piece of intellectual history.
Yeah.
Before Steiner became the spiritual teacher that people know him as today, he was a scholar, a very serious one. He was the editor of Goethe's scientific writings. And he saw something in Goethe's approach to nature that most people just completely missed. You see, Kant had said that the human intellect is discursive.
Okay, discursive. Let's unpack that term. What does it actually mean for our thinking to be discursive?
It means the intellect understands things by taking them apart. It looks at the parts to understand the whole.
Okay.
Think about a complex machine like an old mechanical watch. If you want to understand it, what do? You take the back off, you dismantle the gears, the springs, the screws, you lay them all out on the table.
Right, you see how this piece moves that piece?
You see how gear A turns gear B. You understand the whole by analyzing the mechanical interaction of the parts.
Which works great for watches or engines or computers. That's how we build technology.
Exactly. It works perfectly for the inorganic mineral world, the dead world. But Kant, and he was a genius, realized this method fails completely when you look at a living organism.
Like a plant.
Like a plant, yeah. A leaf isn't just a part that's clicked onto a stem like a Lego brick. It grows out of it. It's determined by the whole plant. The shape of the leaf changes as the plant grows. It's fluid.
It's a process, not a collection of parts.
It's a process. And Kant admitted that to understand life, you would need a different kind of mind. An intellectus archetypus or an intuitive intellect.
Okay, so Kant admits there's a better way to think. He acknowledges there's an intuitive intellect that could grasp the whole before the parts.
He admits it's theoretically possible, maybe for a god, but he emphatically, absolutely denied that humans possess it.
Oh, okay.
He said humans don't have that capacity. We are stuck with the analytical, discursive mind. We're trapped in the Lego brick way of thinking.
But Goethe,
he just didn't accept that limitation. He was a poet, yes, but he was also a very keen observer of nature. And Goethe claimed he could look at a plant and not just see the specific tulip or rose in front of him, but that he could perceive the archetype, the Erbpflanze, or primal plant living within it.
This is that contemplative power of judgment that Steiner talks about.
Yes, Entschwende Urteilskraft. It's a mouthful, but the concept is really beautiful. Goethe argued that if you change how you look, if you move from analyzing to contemplating, you can see the spiritual law that guides the plant's growth. You don't just see the frozen form, you see the process. You see the invisible force that makes a plant a plant.
There's this great anecdote in the sources where Kant talks about this possibility. He calls the attempt to perceive the spiritual essence of nature an adventure of reason.
Right.
And looking at the context, he definitely did not mean that as a compliment. He meant it like, good luck with that crazy journey. You're going to get hopelessly lost.
It was derisive, yes. It was a dismissal. He thought it was a fool's errand. But Goethe, with that wonderful irony he possessed, just picked up the gauntlet.
He leaned into it.
He leaned into it completely. He wrote that he had courageously passed the adventure of reason. He accepted the challenge. He basically said, Kant says we can't do this, but I am doing it. And Steiner took this and just ran with it.
So what was Steiner's contribution?
Steiner realized that Goethe had stumbled upon a new state of consciousness. He took Goethe's artistic intuition and turned it into a scientific method. Steiner's synthesis was that the limit of knowledge is an illusion created because we were using the wrong tool. We're trying to understand life with a tool made for death.
Wow. A tool made for death. That is a heavy statement.
It is.
Which brings us to one of the most shocking and honestly most disturbing images in these lectures. Steiner calls our ordinary, everyday thinking, the thinking we use to pay taxes, drive cars, do science, he calls it a corpse.
It is a startling image, isn't it? He calls it the corpse of thought. It sounds morbid, but for him, it's a precise technical description.
Okay, so unpack that. How is a thought a corpse?
To understand this, we have to look at Steiner's view of human existence before birth. Steiner explains that in our pre-earthly existence, before we are born into these physical bodies, our thinking was alive. It was organic, elemental, and fluid. We didn't just have thoughts, we lived in them.
So thought wasn't something we did inside our heads, it was the environment we lived in. Like we were swimming in a sea of wisdom.
In a sense, yes. It was a living power, the creative force of the universe. But when we descend into the physical body, at the moment of birth, that living thinking dies.
It dies.
It enters the brain and it hardens. It becomes abstract. It's like freezing flowing water into solid ice cubes. So the thoughts we have now, these logical, abstract, sharp-edged concepts, are the dead residue of the living wisdom we had before we were born.
That is dark. But it makes sense of the analogy. A physical corpse proves that a living person once existed. You can't have a corpse without a life that preceded it.
Exactly.
So Steiner is saying our abstract thoughts are the proof that we once had living spiritual cognition.
They're the leftovers.
They're the leftovers. And this explains why modern intellectualism feels the way it does. Steiner points out that since about the 15th century, humanity has become incredibly good at this dead thinking. We've perfected logic, science, technology.
And that's because dead thinking is perfectly suited for the dead world, the world of physics, chemistry, minerals. If you want to build a bridge, you need dead, static concepts. You need to know that steel is steel and gravity is gravity.
Right, I don't want the engineer designing the bridge to be flowing and morphing with his math. I want him to be rigid and precise.
Precisely. Dead thinking is necessary for mastering the material world. But the problem arises when we try to use that same thinking to understand life, or consciousness, or the human soul.
You can't use the same tool.
Dead thinking cannot grasp life. You cannot capture a bird's flight by dissecting the bird. Once you dissect it, the flight is gone. You just have a pile of dead organs.
And this leads to Steiner's big provocation about the modern intellectual. He says if you look at these brilliant academics walking down the street with Gothian eyes, you don't see lively minds. You see spiritual mummies.
Soul mummies.
Right.
It's a powerful critique of the era. He's saying that you can be incredibly smart, have a high IQ, be incredibly logical, and yet be completely dead inside your mind.
Wow.
You are just shuffling around corpses of ideas. You are rearranging the furniture in a graveyard.
That stuck with me. The idea that logic is just the anatomy of thought.
Yes. Steiner says logic is merely the anatomy of thinking. You learn anatomy by dissecting a body. You learn logic by dissecting these dead thoughts. It's necessary. We need logic to navigate the physical world. But we must not mistake it for the whole of reality. We are carrying around a mental graveyard and mistaking it for the world. And because we only trust dead thoughts, we believe the universe is dead. We think it's a machine because we're thinking like machines.
So we're walking around with a graveyard in our heads. That's the diagnosis. We are trapped in a dead simulation of our own making. Now, how do we perform a resurrection?
Yes.
How do we move from this dead thinking to living thinking? Because if Steiner is right, we are missing out on half of reality, the living half.
This is the core of the whole adventure. How do you wake up the corpse? Steiner says we need to reintroduce the quality of life into our thinking. And living thinking is characterized by fluidity, mobility. It doesn't just categorize things into static boxes. It grows and transforms.
Okay, that's still a bit abstract. Does he give examples?
He gives a very practical example of comparing an animal to a human being to illustrate the difference.
Right, this is the anatomy example. Walk us through how a dead thinker does this versus a living thinker.
Okay, so imagine a dead thinker, let's say a traditional comparative anatomist. He looks at an animal's bone structure, maybe a horse. Then he looks at a human's bone structure.
Side by side.
Side by side, yes. He compares them. He measures the angle of the spine, the shape of the pelvis. He says structure A is similar to structure B, but different in these specific measurements. It's a static comparison, A versus B.
It's like comparing two snapshots on a table, or two different models of cars.
Exactly. It's lifeless, a finished product compared to another finished product. But living thinking does something radically different. The living thinker visualizes the animal form, and then in their mind's eye, they don't just jump to the human form.
What do?
They watch that animal form morph and transform into the human form. They participate in the movement. They visualize the spine rotating, the pelvis widening, the brain case expanding. The thought itself undergoes metamorphosis.
So it's not a slideshow, it's a movie.
It's a movie that you are actively directing and producing in real time. It's a dynamic process. You aren't just looking at the end results. You are reenacting the creative forces that shape them. You are thinking the way nature grows.
That feels like it requires a lot more effort than just looking at things. You can't just be a passive observer. You have to be doing the work.
It requires immense effort. And that brings us to the mirror analogy, which is crucial for understanding why this is so hard and why so few people do it.
Okay, the mirror.
Steiner compares ordinary thinking to looking into a mirror. When you look in a mirror, you see an image. But that image is completely dependent on the mirror being there.
Sure.
Our brain is the mirror. Our ordinary thoughts are reflections off the physical brain. We are passive. The brain gives us the reflection.
So ordinary thinking is just us reading the reflection our brain serves up.
In a way, yes. But living thinking, or what Steiner calls imaginative cognition, is like looking through the mirror. or behind it. You stop relying on the physical reflection. You generate the image through pure inner force.
You're not using the brain as a crutch anymore.
You are no longer dependent on the brain to hold the thought for you. You hold it yourself. You are sustaining the thought in a purely spiritual space.
This sounds like where the will comes in. I notice Steiner talks a lot about the will being the secret ingredient. Usually we think of will as, doing stuff, lifting weights, resisting a donut. But he wants us to apply will to thinking itself.
It is the catalyst. It is the secret ingredient. Ordinary thinking is passive. We sit back and let the world impress itself upon us, let our brain reflect it. Living thinking requires an active injection of will.
Okay.
You have to actively hold the thought, sustain it, and transform it. You are using the will forces, which are usually reserved for moving your arms or legs, and you're pumping them into your thinking. You are reviving the corpse of thought by infusing it with your own life force. You are breathing life back into the dead concepts.
Okay, so we need to hit the mental gym. This isn't something that just happens. You have to train for it. And Steiner doesn't just leave this as a high-concept philosophy. He gives exercises. He calls it an initiation path. Let's talk about the workout.
Right.
One of the most famous exercises is the backward review, or Rückschau.
This is a staple of Steiner's methodology. And the instruction is simple, but deceptively difficult.
Yeah.
In the evening, before you sleep, you review your day. But you do not do it from morning to evening, you do it in reverse.
From night back to morning.
You start with the very last thing you did say, brushing your teeth or getting into bed, and you visualize your way backward, scene by scene, all the way to the morning when you woke up.
Why backwards?
Right.
Is it just to make it harder, like doing push-ups with one arm instead of two?
It's not just for difficulty's sake. It's about fighting the stream of time. Steiner explains that ordinary life flows with what he calls the etheric stream, the stream of growth and time. We flow with the river. By thinking backward, you are swimming upstream. You're going against the natural flow of biological life. And this resistance activates the astral forces, the forces of the soul that are independent of the body. It forces the soul to stand on its own 2 feet, so to speak.
Because the brain naturally wants to tell the story forward. I did this, then I did that.
Exactly. The brain runs on cause and effect. Because I was hungry, I ate lunch. But when you go backward, I finished lunch, I was eating, I was hungry. You are breaking that easy chain of causality. You are forcing the mind to step out of the time stream.
He mentions you can do this with other things too, right? Like a drama or a melody. Imagine trying to hum a song backward. That sounds incredibly frustrating.
It requires intense focus. You cannot run on autopilot. When you hum a song forward, habit takes over. Muscle memory takes over.
Sure.
When you do it backward, every single note requires a conscious act of will. That effort strengthens the muscle of independent thinking. You are stripping away the automatic habits of the brain to reveal the pure power of the mind.
And what happens when you start getting strong? Steiner warns about something that sounds like a plot from a psychological thriller, splitting the personality. This isn't usually something you want to happen. We consider that a mental health crisis.
Yes, and Steiner is very, very clear that this is a dangerous path if not done correctly. In our normal everyday state, our soul forces, our thinking, feeling, and willing are all mixed together like a soup.
A mess.
They influence each other chaotically. We think what we feel, we will what we think. It's a mess, but it's a stable mess. The body holds them together.
So the body acts as a container for this psychic soup.
The body is the vessel. But as you advance in these exercises, as you strengthen the independent soul, these forces separate. They become distinct entities. And Steiner uses this vivid image of the king and the 3 beasts.
The king and the beasts. Sounds like something out of a fairy tale.
The king is the I, the ego, the self. And the 3 beasts are the newly independent beings of thinking, feeling, and willing. In initiation, you must become a king enthroned over these 3. But the danger is real. If the king, the I, isn't strong enough to hold the reins, these beasts can run wild.
And what does that look like in practice?
It looks like pathology. You could become a person who thinks brilliantly but has absolutely no feeling, a cold sociopath, or a person of intense will who have no logic, a fanatic, or a person of overwhelming emotion with no will to act.
Okay, I see.
This is why Steiner emphasizes moral development and inner stability before you even start messing with this hidden wiring. You need to build the king's authority before you unleash the beasts.
It's like taking the safety restrictions off the engine of a Formula One car. You can go faster than anyone else, but if you don't know how to drive, you're going to crash into a wall at 200 miles per hour.
Precisely. You're dismantling the natural safeguards of the psyche to rebuild it on a higher, more conscious level. It's demolition and construction at the same time.
This leads us to the ultimate goal of all this hacking and training, the king itself, the I. Steiner has some fascinating things to say about the word I. It's a word we use hundreds of times a day. I'm hungry, I think this. But he thinks it's practically a magic spell.
It is a linguistic puzzle that points directly to a spiritual reality. Steiner reminds us that I is the only name in the entire language that can only be used by one person to refer to themselves.
Right.
I can call you you, he can call you you, everyone listening can call you you, but only you can call yourself I.
It's a name that can't be given from the outside. If I walk up to you and say, "Hello, I," it makes no sense at all.
Exactly. It comes from the innermost core. It is the one point where the world cannot name you. You must name yourself. Steiner connects this to the Hebrew name for God, Yahweh, the I am that I am. It is the name that wells up from the center of the being.
But there's a catch.
There is a catch, and this is the crucial part. The I we experience every day, the I that wants coffee, the I that gets annoyed in traffic, the I that is worried about taxes, that is the lower I. It's the everyday ego. It is bound to the body and the sensory reflection in the mirror.
So where is the higher I, the true I? Because if I'm trapped in the lower I, I'm still in the prison cell.
The higher I is hidden. It's the part of us that persists between lives, our eternal core. And the paradox of finding it is that you have to lose the lower I to find the higher I.
You have to lose your life to save it. It's a classic spiritual paradox.
It is. Steiner describes the stage of intuition, which is the highest stage of knowledge in his system, as a state of complete selflessness. You pour yourself out into the world. You stop protecting your little ego boundaries. And in that silence, in that void where your petty ego used to be, the true I appears.
And it doesn't appear alone.
It doesn't appear alone. This is the part that blew my mind in the readings. He says you find your I embedded in the spiritual beings. It's not just you floating in a void like a lonely astronaut.
So you find yourself in the hierarchies, the angels, archangels.
Yes. And Steiner gives this incredible, almost cinematic analogy of the turning head to explain what this feels like. Imagine you're in a room and you're looking around. You see the walls, the windows, but you aren't the one turning your head. A group of beings around you are gently holding your head and turning it this way and that. You are seeing, but the direction of your gaze is guided by others.
That's a wild image. So I'm the one perceiving, the camera is on, but the angels are directing the cinematography.
In a sense, yes. At the level of intuition, you feel that your consciousness is supported and directed by these higher beings. You are one with them, yet you remain a distinct individual. You are a drop in the ocean, but a drop that knows it is a drop and knows it is the ocean.
That is the ultimate antidote to that isolation we talked about at the beginning.
It is. You aren't locked in your head. Your head is part of the cosmic body.
That's the I am. It's not I am this person with this job. It's I am one with the spiritual substance of the world.
And that is the resurrection. The corpse of dead thinking is revived by the will, the personality is split and mastered, and the isolated, trapped consciousness breaks through the Kantian wall to find its true home in the cosmos.
So let's just recap this journey we've been on. We started in the prison cell of the mind with Kant guarding the door saying, you can't know reality. You can only know the simulation. You can only see the screen.
And we saw Goethe and Steiner pick the lock. They said, no, the screen is only there because you are looking passively. If you wake up your thinking, the screen dissolves.
We realized that our normal logical thoughts are actually corpses, dead leftovers of a pre-birth wisdom, and that if we want to see reality, we have to wake them up. We have to practice living thinking, turning static pictures into moving movies.
Stop dissecting the bird and start flying with it.
We discussed the workout thinking, backward to fight the stream of time, strengthening the will so we don't just reflect the world but create it, and the real danger of that process. And finally, we found the higher I, hiding in plain sight, waiting for us to stop staring at the mirror and look through it.
And the relevance of this cannot be overstated. Why should anyone listening care about German philosophy from 100 years ago?
Right.
Because without living thinking we are asleep, we are handling the husks of reality, the dead matter, and missing the kernel, which is the spirit. If we treat the world as a dead mechanism, we build a dead civilization. We build machines. We treat people like machines. And we destroy nature because we don't see the life in it. If we learn to think with life, we can build a living civilization.
I want to leave everyone with one final image from the sources. It's the image of the glass mountain. Steiner describes an initiation experience that takes place high in the mountains, surrounded by quartz crystals.
It's a beautiful, powerful vision. He says that as you advance in this spiritual perception, the solid rock of the mountain, the hard, opaque quartz, begins to lose its hardness, becomes transparent, like glass.
And you feel your own eyes sending currents into the rock. You aren't just looking at the mountain, you are merging with it. And suddenly the earth isn't this lonely, solid rock floating in space.
Yeah.
It becomes a transparent jewel, glowing with light, connected to the entire cosmos.
That is the view from the other side of the wall. That is what awaits the living thinker.
So here's my question to you. If your current thoughts are just the corpses of a wisdom you had before you were born, what would happen if you woke them up right now? What would your glass mountain look like? Thanks for diving deep with us.